So we all grew up with this notion, remember being taught in science class that food, clothing, and shelter, those are the things that you need. But we know that nurture is important to a child's development and that play is also important. This is something new. As we're researching more and more, we realize that play is important. So offering opportunities for children to play is vital for them. And what about an iPad? I don't know how many of you heard this story or actually saw this story of the toddler, barely a toddler, who was given an iPad for the first time. She takes her finger, puts her finger on the screen because she knows something is supposed to happen when she puts her finger on the screen, and she's engaged in doing things. Then they give her a magazine. They put the magazine in front of her. She puts her finger on the magazine and nothing happens. But she doesn't look at the magazine, she looks at her finger, like something's wrong with her finger. I'm gonna talk about 4 different things very quickly. Education being the first. Education for the digital child is changing rapidly. The technology that they have access to will likely change even more rapidly than it's changing today. Think about how many iPhones have come out in the past, 18 months. More children are leaving, but we have to think about this. More children are leaving the breakfast and the dinner tables hungry, if they have a table at all. So here you have hyperconnectivity, yet you have empty bellies. This not only plays a part in their physical development, but also in their ability to learn. Can you learn on an empty stomach? More children will enter the doors of the classroom ill-prepared and with a minimal access to quality books and resources in their homes. There used to be a time when there were lots and lots of books in homes. That's fading away. And then in the classroom, we have lots of budget cuts because of the economy. Classroom size is on the rise, and teachers, even exceptional teachers, will be stretched to teach and nurture children in a way that is appropriate for their development. And I used to teach, and having just 1 or 2 more children in a 3rd grade classroom made a huge difference in how much time I could devote to each child in the classroom. You know, we have No Child Left Behind, which impacts the lowest performing schools, and it has very few positive options for helping schools improve. All of this creates an environment where children may not receive the experiences necessary to move forward. We do have one little shining star in all of this, Head Start. Head Start, which is being reorganized because it's not all Head Starts are not shining stars, but there are many that are. It has proven to be one of the most effective early intervention educational programs for poor children. Now we get to media. The Kaiser report found that on average, an 8-year-old is exposed to some form of media nearly 56 hours a week, with 37 of those hours in actual media use. And we're talking screen time. This does not include texting or talking on the phone, and includes less than 5 hours spent with print media. These same 8-year-olds who Kaiser has been following since infancy report being not as happy as their peers who spend more face-to-face time engaged with others. And I do encourage you to look at that report and the way that they've asked the questions over the years. The children really don't know what they're being asked, but when you see that piece about the joy they're not feeling, it's really quite touching. The economy. 1 in 5 children live at or below the poverty line. Hispanic children make up the highest percentage, followed by African Americans, and with a significant rise in the percentage of Caucasian children living in poverty. Children of immigrants are the most deeply impacted by poverty. This means that during those pivotal years of brain development, birth to 3, the digital generation is growing up in circumstances that can be devastating to their overall well-being. The number of those in the digital generation who are homeless is growing more rapidly than any other demographic except for women. One group that the Children's Defense Fund looks at is those families who have food and shelter insecurity. So you may have food for today, but not for tomorrow. You may have shelter today, but not for tomorrow. You may be living here today or living there today, and then you have children who are going to multiple schools during the school year. Access to health care continues to be difficult and uncertain, and since many children living at or below the poverty line do not develop deep, sustaining relationships, this impacts their overall health. The family is more diverse, with the head of the household more likely to be female. Studies show that children growing up in homes where they feel secure and loved fare better than homes where they do not feel secure and loved, no matter who the head of the household is, no matter how the family is structured. The architecture of the developing brain is shaped by a child's environments of relationships. The Center for Developing Child is just one place that offers ongoing research into brain development. And in their most recent presentation in October, Dr. Shonkoff passionately spoke of the importance of relationships in the lives of children, especially during the first 3 years. There was a sense of urgency in his voice as he discussed the danger in exposure to even short amounts of screen media during the first years as the brain strives to make essential connections. Young children learn best by interacting with adults who engage in playful moments to create everyday learning opportunities. Now, this comes from the Sesame Street workshop. And you know, Sesame Street is all about television, what's going on television. But in their own research, even though they find that preschoolers benefit from watching their programs, 0 to 3, birth to 3, it is detrimental for them to have too much screen time, even watching Sesame Street. So let's look at Wesley a bit. Gift or no gift, you are to do it, else you are not called to be a Methodist preacher. And this is responding to the whining preachers who did not want to spend the required 1 hour a week with children in their societies. More than ever in our history, this statement from John Wesley carries a sense of urgency. Wesley helped develop schools and clinics, and Methodists have a history in supporting quality education, quality health care, and public education for such a large number of the digital generation will impact their overall quality of life as they grow. So if they're not getting the education that they need, if they're not getting the health care that they need as they develop, as their brains are developing, and we are not doing anything to support that and make that happen for children, they will not be prepared for how rapid our world will continue to change. Now let's go to Jesus. It would be better for you if a great millstone were fastened around your neck and you were drowned in the depth of the sea. Does anybody remember where this comes from? Stumbling blocks. Yes, exactly. And I think this is serious. We know that most of the time in the Bible that when Jesus speaks of children, he's talking about people new to faith. But in this particular text, he holds up a child. He holds a child there and says, here's true greatness. And he calls us to make sure that we are not putting stumbling blocks in front of that child. So if we as a church can find ways to make sure that we're supporting public education, make sure that we're supporting health care for children, make sure that we are doing the research that it takes to be sure that we know what is happening with our children. If we are doing that, we're doing what Jesus has called us to do, and we're not putting that stumbling block in front of our children, and we won't have a millstone around our necks. So I think what children want is for us to engage with them. But what we have to understand is that it cannot take the place of face-to-face relationship and communication, especially for our youngest children. They need to see your face. They need to be able to connect in that way. The other thing about the iPad is that, yes, they will connect to the screen, but they shut down everything else to connect to the screen. Give them a book, sit them in your lap. They connect to the book and to the person who is reading to them. And imagine telling them our story this way. So a few questions I want to leave you with. How are we offering children opportunities to engage beyond the iPad? What resources do we need to put in place so that the digital generation will thrive even in an uncertain time? And we're living in a time of uncertainty. What can the church offer that will positively impact the life of children who are hungry, homeless, and denied quality education? How can we nurture a generation who are just as comfortable with a mobile phone as with a book? How can we incorporate natural play into the everyday lives of the digital generation?